all agents. We have an inbound blizzard warning. We have to get the cure and get out before the storm hits.
Come on, move it! We don't have much time!
The Hunters are a completely different NPC type that was introduced when the survival update dropped. Unfortunately, there isn't really that much covered in-game. Through the recordings and echoes, and even the New York Collapse book only briefly mentions something that could be directed towards the Hunters. So as far as the official story goes, the identity of the Hunters is a mystery. But through the facts we do know about them, there are a number of theories as to who the Hunters are and where they come from. In this video, I'm going to run through some of the more popular theories and discuss the potential origin and motives of these agent killing machines. For the purpose of figuring out where they sit in the overall lore of the Division, I'll be talking about the Hunters based on their initial introduction to the game, Survival, as I believe that the addition of Hunters to the Underground, Legendary Missions and Resistance was more of a challenge and balancing update to these game modes than a continuation of the story. Of course, the same could be said about the initial introduction of the Hunters too, but there are just too many telltale signs and pieces that line up to consider these as simply a new NPC added for greater difficulty with no backstory. Firstly, let's cover what we do know about the Hunters. They use advanced combat movement and strategies, have stronger weapons and tougher armor than Division agents, use shade technology, behave cooperatively, target first and second wave Division agents, don't attack civilians, collect agent watches, originated in the Dark Zone. Based on this information alone, I feel it's fairly reasonable to state that the Hunters are not affiliated with the Rioters, Rikers, Cleaners, and even the LMB, as their technology and training is far superior to anything these factions offer. So with this in mind, let's run over some of the theories that have come out. Hunters are former First Wave agents loyal to Aaron Keener. This is probably one of the most popular theories out there. As we know, Keener has a blueprint for the Dollar Flu. He obtained it through Amherst's laboratory. And he also has Dr. Vitaly Tynenko, who has the knowledge to create a potential cure. So naturally, he'd want a cure to be developed to keep himself, and everyone loyal to him, safe. The antivirals, even if they're experimental, would be beneficial towards the creation of the cure. So having agents that were highly skilled and trained to protect these would be of interest to Keener. On top of this, if the Strategic Homeland Division was to obtain the antivirals and create a cure, it would severely reduce the threat of Keener's plan to weaponize the virus, dramatically lowering any leverage he has. So the Hunters are basically there as an elite agent, collecting and stopping anyone from extracting the antivirals from the Dark Zone. It's certainly possible, and a lot of things do line up, but this theory doesn't quite sit well with me, and I'll go into that soon. But first, I'll run over theory number 2. It's very similar to this one, but with one very slight difference. Hunters are former First Wave agents not loyal to Aaron Keener. As we know, when things went from bad to worse in the Dark Zone, Aaron Keener split from the Division and went rogue. A number of First Wave agents proceeded to join him. Any agents that didn't were killed. And because of this, any agents that weren't loyal to Aaron Keener cut communications and went into hiding. This cutting of communications was to stop them from being hunted down. But unfortunately, this would have also cut them off from the rest of the Division too. It's likely that while in hiding, they weren't actually aware of the second wave being activated. So when the second wave agents show up using SHD tech and other Division agent gear, they're just seen as another first wave agent fighting for Keener. We also need to think about the mental state of these agents. Second wave agents have it tough, but the first wave agents would have had it much worse. Then they had the government pull out of the Dark Zone, leaving them behind, and finally, with the likes of Keener and his rogue agents, they started turning on each other. This could explain why the Hunters fight with such brutality. They're seeking revenge. And why did they come out of hiding to attack agents during a blizzard? They see the agents are weakened and struggling to get extracted, so they're using the opportunity to strike back. This theory feels a lot more plausible than the previous one, as it talks a lot more to the savage fighting style and trophy hunting practices of the Hunters. They're alone, cut off from the outside world, and seeking revenge for Aaron Keener's betrayal of the government and their fellow First Wave agents. But there is one thing that just doesn't feel right with these two theories. The Hunters are obviously the next tier up from the Division agents. Their movement, fighting styles, armor, and even their equipment is of higher quality and better technology than the first and second wave agents. They have tech specifically for jamming SHD equipment. Sure, having been left to survive on their own against the weather and other hostile factions will have taught them some things, and honed in on a few of their existing talents, but it hasn't been long enough for them to be able to fight that much more effectively than the rest of the Division agents. We've already faced a couple of Keena's rogue agents, Scarecrow and Raptor, and the Hunters are on a completely different level. Now I'm just stating that they're not first wave agents. I still believe they have something to do with the SHD. Hunters are Russian agents. I see this one pop up from time to time. The idea behind this one is that while locked up in the Russian consulate, Vitaly Tynenko contacted the Russian government and tried to exchange his knowledge on the virus for an escape out of the city. This was too late as the Russian consulate was sieged by Aaron Keena and the LMB, and he was kidnapped. The Russians learned of this and retaliated by sending in a group of highly trained agents to hunt him down. This is why the Hunters are always targeting first and second wave division agents, in hope that they can extract information on Aaron Keena and his whereabouts. These agents had to specialize in keeping out of sight and must appear as though they're not affiliated with Russia to avoid international conflict between the two superpower countries. I can see why people have come up with this somewhat cliché theory, but there are a number of things that just don't really line up. In the Tynenko audio logs, we're told about Russia pulling out of New York pretty heavily following the outbreak. With the fact that a number of the larger cities in Russia have also been hit with the virus, they're more likely to be committing all resources to helping themselves. But the Russian government needs Tynenko for his knowledge on the virus. We need to remember that Amherst went to Russia to study, as Russia is the only other country that has smallpox samples. In fact, he met Tynenko in a Russian lab. It's more than likely that Russia already has their own research on the virus. Plus, we need to remember that this is a global epidemic. The situation is dire. Countries will be focusing on containing and fixing the problems at home, rather than using precious resources on political agendas. Hunters are the third wave. This is the theory that I find the most probable, as it ticks the most boxes and feels the most in line with the story, and it also acts as a bit of a twist for the future of the franchise. The second wave was activated with the objective to find out what happened to the first wave, and to continue with the goal of restoring order. When the second wave learned about the treason of the first wave, the government was also listening. Up until this point, the second wave was doing a good job shutting down the hostile factions, and now the biggest threat that was rising was the agents themselves. We need to think about it from the government point of view. First wave agents are sent in, they all go MIA. Second wave agents get sent in to investigate. They find out that the first wave agents betray their country and go rogue under the leadership of one of their own. The risk of the second wave joining Keena's crew was extremely high. In order to manage this risk, they have, or they create, a backup plan. The third wave. This wave is equipped with gear and training that solely focuses on taking down SHD agents. To stop it from getting too far out of hand, they release the Hunters, whose primary job is to take down any and all division agents. Also, the first and second wave agents have been privy to a lot of information around the government's failing of their attempt to contain the outbreak. They forced all of the sick into an area of the city and then gave up and left, leaving agents and thousands of sick to fend for themselves. The Hunters being sent in to eliminate all division agents mean that there is no one around to know what actually happened. But then who removes the Hunters? I believe that the Hunters are only given enough information to remove the division agents from New York City. No more, no less. They're simply given the information that all division agents are traitors and need to be eliminated. This could also explain why the Hunters collect agent watches too. When following missing agent alerts, we find a watch at the end, and this supplies a lot of the information regarding the missing agent. The Hunters are collecting these watches under direction to further assist in stopping the story from getting out. Now, in keeping this disaster a secret, the government cannot be seen to be sending in troops to eliminate their own. This is why the Hunters wear masks, so if seen, they can't be identified. And this could also explain why they kill in such a brutal manner. They want it to appear as if one of the hostile factions were responsible. In the book, Tom Clancy's The Division, New York Collapse, it's hinted that there is a division within the division. This could mean many things, but it implies that there is more than one division within the Strategic Homeland Division. It could just be talking about the first and second wave, but it could also be hinting at the Hunters being a separate faction within the division. Suddenly, Keena's reasons for turning rogue doesn't look so bad, right? Maybe he saw this coming after the initial betrayal of the government, when they left the first wave agents for dead after withdrawing from the Dark Zone. Maybe this is where the supply drops are coming from and who they're intended for. These aren't fully explained, and even Fei Lao doesn't fully understand them. Apologies that I couldn't bring in any real hard facts about the story of the Hunters. There just isn't anything out there. I believe they've purposely left the Hunters out of the story for now, to give them that mystery, but I think we'll be hearing more about them in Division 2. Hopefully they'll clear this up for us. This has probably raised more questions than it's answered, but it shows the depth that the Division story can go. Even with the last theory, there are a ton of questions to be answered, but really, any of these are a possibility, as we only have a few clues to go by. Which of these do you find most plausible, or do you have a theory of your own? Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this, or at the very least, I've got you thinking. See you on the next one. Cheers.